surprised that we're in dramatically changing times right now. Let's begin. So there's a picture of me. I am not a therapist. I am a health psychologist, but I'm an educator. So I'm probably going to tell you things that you already know, but I've discovered that in times of pandemics and stress in general, that it's just nice to have a couple of reminders of things. So sit back, relax, and just kind of enjoy the ride here. And again, I guess a reminder of things we already know. One of the reasons why I'm doing this is that I have a certification workshop where I teach people how to teach stress management and resiliency. And this is not just for well, it's for anybody in the allied health profession. We have lots of therapists, we have nurses, we have professors, we have doctors, we have all kinds of people because everyone's got stress. And so what I do for my career is I teach people about stress, resiliency, and the idea is that everyone's got stress. We call this the equal opportunity destroyer. So there I am giving a talk to a bunch of counselors and therapists there at a conference. I also speak to nurses. You're not nurses, although we probably will have one or two in the audience, be kind of nice. But let's hear it for the therapists and the counselors. And so, but by the way, I got to tell you that there aren't many pictures that are not staged because for privacy reasons. So just thought I'd share with you that this is a archetypal picture of you in your setting, which right now probably is a Zoom setting, but you get the idea. So I just thought I'd bring to your attention some of the headlines. You know, the APA comes out with a study every year called Stress in America. And last year was so stressful, they did 3 or 4 of them just to kind of get their fingers on the pulse of what's going on. And of course, if you were around, you know, it was a very stressful time with the election and the pandemic. I mean, it was this, you know, crisis du jour practically, but it's not over. And it turns out that we have the same apprehensions and anxieties going on right now. And then, of course, we're also seeing some of the economic issues surface. And so we're not out of this by any stretch of the imagination, but the real problem is we need to actually come to terms with this. So I have this slide in my presentation called The Coming Crisis. I just added the words, it's here. The crisis is here. You know, I live in Boulder, Colorado, and it turns out that I was talking to one of my friends, colleagues in the allied health profession. She said that there's a waiting list to see a therapist in Boulder. This is before the shooting, I might add, so probably a longer waiting list right now. But I think that in one sense it's good. People actually are looking for help and they're getting it. It's not good that we have a waiting list. I mean, you want help right away. You don't want to wait, you know, a few weeks to a month or so. But we knew this was coming. This was forecasted. I saw this the first moments I heard about the pandemic in China. And so it turns out that it's washed, it's up on the shores here. And so now we have a mental health crisis for sure. I don't know if you follow the news. I do, because I like to kind of get some good insights on specifics here. But there's a real problem right now with women under 40 with cirrhosis of the liver because of drinking alcohol and such. What's kind of not hit the news is the whole opioid crisis, because there's only so much time in the news for stressors, but it turns out that that hasn't gone away. We have all kinds of economic problems. Luckily, people have got their stimulus checks, hopefully, but there's also issues about employment or evictions. The list is pretty endless, and I don't want to go into that in detail. You get the idea. You probably have clients going through this right now, talking to you about this. But anyway, the problem is that we have a crisis. It's here. It's not coming. It's here, and we need to deal with it. But you also need to take care of yourself, and that's the whole idea about self-care. So stress was here before the crisis, the pandemic. It's going to be here long afterwards. The implications are actually pretty devastating. I think this will be going on for quite some time. There I am teaching again. Just thought I'd show you what I do there, resiliency. But let's take a look at aspects of stress, just to kind of remind you a little what you already know. And this looks like the grieving process. Kudos to you for catching on to that, because this is the grieving process. You know, Kubler-Ross made this pretty popular, but she's not the only one who talks about this. And there's different ways in which we go through the process, but notice anger there. So there's a lot of anger, frustration. You probably see some people saying, I don't want to wear a face mask. You know, I just want to hop on a plane and do my own thing. We're seeing a real values conflict going on between freedom and responsibility. If you've not caught on to that, I want to make it really clear that something that you might want to begin to address with some of your clients and patients is how they are addressing some of these conflict values issues. So aspects of change really is aspects of stress. This is really the grieving process. And what I typically see, what you're probably seeing, is when you've got this going on, there's a lot of grieving. And, so Kubler-Ross nailed it, 30, 40 years ago. And although there's variations on the theme of what she did, I just want to address the bigger concept that there is a lot of grieving going on right now. And it's the loss of freedom, the death of freedom, if you will, in some people's heads or their minds, that they can't do things like they used to. How many times have you heard the expression, I want things to return back to normal, normal, whatever that was. And of course, there's also people saying that, what we had back then wasn't quite functional. So maybe a tweak or a course correction will be a good idea. But anyway, just take a look at this for a second. It takes a while to get to the idea of acceptance. And then once you're at acceptance, then you got to adapt to the situation. So one take on the whole prospect here of the grieving process, but I want you to know your clients, by and large, are probably going through some element of this. And with grieving comes victimization. Okay, just FYI on that. So hopefully you're not feeling that, but if you're human, you probably have had that thought going through your head at least once or twice in the course of the past year. Okay, so I mentioned before the APA's Stress in America study. If you get a chance, I highly recommend you Google this just to kind of keep up on things and see what's going on and see what some of the stressors are. As you well know, a lot of people who talk about their stress don't always identify and can't identify with what the underlying cause is. They kind of like beat around the bush or go with something perhaps a little more less I don't know, threatening they want to talk about. But anyway, just to be aware, this is what's going on. This is actually 2021 study which came out last month. And my guess is we're going to see a few more of these. So how do we live in the new normal? And you probably have your clients, your patients asking you this. You probably asking this yourself. And I've done this before with Dan and the group here about adaptation. We might kind of revisit some of that again. What I want to do is just kind of do a little bit of talking about some of the stuff and then see if we can't answer some questions. So if you have some questions, feel free to put those in the chat box and we'll come to those at the end of the talk here. I heard this one great therapist say, how do we live the new normal? We create a new normal. And this may be basically create a new normal for yourself. I love the book called Tuesdays with Morrie. You maybe came across that book or the TV show. And in there's a great line that says, if you don't like the culture you're in, be a culture of one. And this book came out well before the pandemic, but the message is the same. Create your own new normal and do this so you can reclaim some personal power. You don't give your power away through anger, through anxiety, through frustration and such. So here we are, some headlines about the coronavirus, and I should put some new ones up there. But what we're hearing right now, time and time again, and I'm sure you're probably hearing this too, is the whole idea about exhaustion. This is the word that comes up time and time again. And we may have heard the word burnout before, but now we're hearing the word exhaustion. And this is actually in a hospital where I do some consulting, but my guess is a lot of people across the country, no matter where they're working, have felt this, mostly because they're working from home, doing all kinds of things. Uh-oh, I just lost my thing. Let's see if I can bring it back up here. Slides are nice when they're working properly. I think my computer's, oh, there we go. Okay, my computer's exhausted. Okay, so, but we have a new name for this, pandemic fatigue. I heard Fauci mention this a few times in the news this past week, but he's not the only person. And my guess is you may have sensations of pandemic fatigue because it takes a lot of toll, a lot of energy to just function and put on a good face to your clientele that as best you can. So there's all kinds of ways that shows up. I heard on the news that there's an increase in the sale of ice cream by 20%. And I'm thinking like, oh my God, people are doing binge eating like they're doing binge watching. Not good. We had an obesity problem before the pandemic. I don't even want to know what's going to happen after or during. So there's burnout, just FYI on that. By the way, I staged this picture with my friends who work in a hospital, but the irony is that this woman on the floor was acting. The woman doing the scheduling has no clue what's going on. And I think that's very common in our culture where a lot of people who we work with are totally clueless about our own feelings and of exhaustion and stuff. So there's a term that I want you to be aware of. It's called compassion fatigue. And it didn't originate with nurses, I don't think, originally. And pretend this is a therapist. It's kind of hard to get pictures of therapists, like I said. So I have borrow heavily from nursing. But what this really comes down to is that, you got in this profession because you care, you want to help people. But at some point, if you don't fill your own cup and take care of yourself, we talk about self-care, you're not going to have any energy to be compassionate for your clients, your patients, your students, your whatever the case might be there. So self-care is really about trying to fill your own cup so that you've got an energy reserve for yourself and you're not running on empty. So the expression, you can't pour from an empty cup. And boy, we're seeing a lot of people who are running on empty right now. Kudos to Jackson Brown and his song there. But we often say that self-care is refilling your cup. So this is a topic about self-care. This is a message about self-care. And my question to you is, what are you doing for your own self-care? A lot of people think that it's, massages and a bubble baths, and that is not the only part of self-care. Unplugging from your computer, taking time to quiet the mind is part of self-care for sure. There's lots of ways to do it, but my question is, what are you doing for yourself? Are you taking time to refill your cup, no matter how that is metaphorically? Because if you're not, then we've got an episode of compassion fatigue, and this is only going to spiral down into victimization and more stress. So because you're in the front lines of the healthcare industry, you're the front lines of the pandemic as we're talking here, it's not just grocery store workers and things like that. It's actually all kinds of people in the allied health profession. You got to take care of yourself. And this is not arrogance. It's not conceitedness. It's not egotistical. It is essential for you to keep your cup filled. And it's going to get drained a lot quicker than the average person out there who doesn't have as much encounter with people who are coming to them with all their problems and their concerns and their anxieties and such. So if you get nothing else out of this talk, my question to you is, what are you doing for your own self-care? What are you doing to refill your own cup? So you've probably seen this come through on social media. I thought was pretty good. It says you wouldn't let this happen to your phone, God forbid. Don't let it happen to you either. So self-care is not a luxury. There's a lot of pictures of people taking bubble baths and jacuzzis and massages. And yes, that is great if you can do it. But that is not the only part that we talk about in terms of self-care. So just FYI. And I want to, if you get nothing else out of this talk today, it's this. It's okay to unplug from social media. It's okay to unplug from your computer and just have some alone time. We call this healthy boundaries. I know I've covered this quite a bit before, but it's good to hear it again. And so my question to you is, how are your healthy boundaries? These are things we teach in the workshop. Again, I don't teach a stress management workshop in the certification class. I teach how to teach this. And I don't know if you're the kind of therapist that just sits there and listens, the Freudian style, we don't say anything for an hour, or if you make suggestions or do any kind of coaching or tips. Lots of different takes on people who are in the counseling profession there. But I think it's actually a time right now where these people who are coming to you are looking for skill development. And that's what we teach in stress management holistically. It's a mind, body, spirit approach. And, back when I first started teaching stress management, the whole aspect was about trying to reduce physical symptoms of stress, muscle tension, headaches, things like that. Then became this whole explosion of knowledge about how your mind affects your body. Of course, the term psychosomatic has been around for quite some time, but we also realized that you can have a good effect on your body. And so there was this whole other side of coping with stress that was cognitive based, cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm sure you're well aware of that. Holistic stress management says, let's put the two together. Let's deal with the symptoms. Let's deal with the cause. Let's deal with the health of the human spirit. Let's deal with the emotions. And so I often describe this as the integration, balance, and harmony of mind, body, spirit, emotions, which most programs you don't hear, because most programs are very territorial with their one specific part of the wellness paradigm, whether it's the physical aspect, the mental, the emotional, or the spiritual. But we put them all together because we are a dynamic package. And if you only take a look at the pieces and don't take a look at the whole, how it all comes together, we're doing a half-baked job. There's also another expression, I'll let you use your imagination, but you don't want to be caught doing that either. So I tell you here, it's okay to unplug. It's essential to unplug. And this goes back to your own self-care. We got two agendas going on here, your own self-care, but also how are you effectively counseling and doing therapy with your clients. I love this picture of this guy in the bike. And I'll tell you why. He's not in the driver's seat. Would you agree? Yeah. But he's also not falling off the bike. He's still in balance. And this is what we teach about stress management. You know, I am not into rainbows and unicorns. A lot of people are really into positive psychology. And yes, that's important. And I love the topic. But until you work with the grieving, until you work with the victimization, you're never going to get anybody to begin to acknowledge things like gratitude on a regular basis, or the focus on happiness. We've got to clear up the underlying cause and stuff, and then get them back to balance. So I tell you here, this guy is not in the driver's seat, but he's not falling off the bike either. This is a picture of balance. This is actually what we want all of our clients, therapists, patients, whatever you want to call them. This is the goal. So self-care. That's a picture of my wife. She has no idea she's in the slideshow. Actually, she does. I was trying to go for some comic relief there. But this is, everyone thinks that self-care is a hot bath. Yeah, it's part of it. It's not the whole picture. It's also not this either, a massage. Yeah, it's great, but that's just not all self-care is. If you could basically just sit and unplug from the world and gather your thoughts and focus on your breathing, that is a great exercise in self-care. Well, I had this expression that says, let self-care be your superpower. You know, we have a nurse here. Put yourself in this picture. This could be a therapist or a counselor. I didn't have a photograph of them. I already mentioned why. You get the idea. But my question to you is, what is your superpower? And I hope the first answer you have is self-care, because if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else is going to. So back to the corona pandemic. Just a little review of some of the things we have going on here. My guess is you probably see this walking into your patient client sessions on a regular basis, but notice that things are mounting, and the biggest problems we're seeing over and over again are alienation and isolation, which I think this picture does a great job of capturing. Let me just give you some definitions. It's always nice to kind of have a little bit of anchoring here. Definitions. It says self-care, the ability of individuals, families, and communities to promote health, prevent disease, maintain health, and to cope with illness and disability with or without the support of a healthcare provider. This is pie in the sky self-care, which I think is great. It's a good start. But that's not the only definition we have. We got another one, this time from the Nursing Association, the Holistic Nursing Association, which, by the way, is a mind, body, spirit approach. They say self-care is the intentional time taken by an individual, that's you, to nurture oneself physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually on a daily basis. Not like once a year for a massage, a daily basis. So my question to you is, again, how's your self-care? What are you doing for self-care? How are you taking care of yourself? And self-care is code for stress management and resiliency. If I haven't made that clear, I want to connect those dots right now. One more definition. I found this on Facebook. I thought I'd share with you too. It says self-care is choosing not to argue with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Lovely definition of self-care. So you can see lots of different ways to address this. That one I thought was good for this. You can't talk about self-care without this, self-compassion. I don't know if any of you are fans of Brene Brown. I'm a big fan of hers. I think she's done some wonderful information sharing about shame and vulnerability. If you've not heard of Brene Brown, I'd like to introduce you to her and her work. She didn't write this book, but she definitely gave a endorsement to it. Kristen Neff is a scholar on the topic of self-compassion. And unless you really express compassion toward yourself, self-care is an illusion. So just to kind of round things out here before we kind of head to questions, some basic stress management. We always speak about metaphors in stress management because you're talking about the mind and emotions, and that's very intangible. So we use metaphors to explain what they're like and how we approach them. And so a bridge is the metaphor we're going to describe here. And the question is, how good's your bridge? And there's two ways we deal with stress. One is to strengthen the structure so that it can withstand a lot of weight, metaphorical weight, of course. And then we also lighten the load. We don't want to carry a lot of weight. This is also code for baggage, in case you're trying to connect some dots there. So, so much of stress management is this: strength and structure, good skill development for coping techniques and relaxation techniques. And my guess is if you're not addressing coping techniques and relaxation techniques with your clients we're not doing the best job we could. We could do better. And then, of course, part of what you do, I'm sure, is helping them learn to lighten the load or increase awareness so that they can actually get rid of some of this baggage. But that alone is not enough either. Again, it's a whole picture. That's what we talk about, holistic stress management. So my question to you is, how's your bridge? Before we start taking a look at the bridge of your clients, how's the bridge that you metaphorically have created? Is it strong? Is it strong enough? And are you carrying a load that needs to be dumped before you cross the bridge? All of us have stuff that we can dump and lighten the load. There's no doubt about it. And so the question to you is, to be a really good therapist, how are you modeling your own stress management? So I don't want to review this again because I gave a whole talk on it before I can dig back and find that. But the real message in the course of our time right now, and we've got a few more, I like to say months, but I think we got years of this. We need to adapt to the changes. We have all kinds of things on the horizon coming away. So again, I put this list up here: healthy grieving, and this basically says how to grieve responsibly and not get caught in the whirlpool of negativity, how to honor our feelings, acknowledge our feelings, honor our feelings, and to work through them and not become a victim to them. And so if you've got clients who are constantly angry, and there's a lot of anger out there, this is part of that lighten the load message I was mentioning earlier. We need to actually let that go. I won't read through the whole list here, but you get the whole idea. We want to basically adapt to the stress that we're going through right now. So I'm going to leave this up on the screen, and then we're going to see if we can bring Dan back here and answer any questions you have, or see what questions you've asked, and we'll take it like that. So Dan, you want to see if we have any questions?
Yeah, I don't see any questions yet. We've got some people in the chat, so we'll give them a minute. If anyone has any questions, type them in the chat and we will definitely get them answered. One question that I would have, as someone who, has more on their plate right now than they can handle, what would you recommend for people like that, like myself, who already have 150% of things they need to do in a day? How do you take breaks to add stress management into your day?
Yeah, great question. And I think that probably is good for everyone to hear. So just a reminder, what we all need to hear, all need to do is take a moment to sketch out your day, see where you're filling the slots in, and then ask yourself, what really is a priority? We could talk about time management. We could talk about all kinds of aspects of resource management. But my question to everyone who can relate to this is, where do you put in time for yourself? That's got to be a higher priority than I don't know, Bridgerton or whatever the favorite TV show is these days. Yeah, that's really important. And I've got this one slide, it's probably too far down the thing. I'm not going to try and find it, but it's a picture of a girl binge watching television. It says something to the effect that this is not proper self-care. You may think it is, but we're actually draining our energy in the consumption of things like that. So go through your day, kind of sketch out, I won't make names here, but there used to be presidents who would have their daily schedule in 15-minute blocks to see where they spent their time and stuff. And I think I saw this article in National Geographic magazine a couple of years ago, a couple of administrations ago, I might add. But it turns out that you might want to go through and check out your hour by hour schedule in 15-minute blocks. I often teach meditation. I say you don't need to sit there for half an hour the first day. If you can just sit quietly for a few moments and focus on your breathing before you start your day, this is a great way to begin to recharge your personal energy. So, I think a lot of times we think self-care is an hour out of our day. We don't have that. I'm saying let's start with 2 minutes. We've all got 2 minutes to do that. So my question is, or my suggestion is, take a look at your day. Really just sit down with your day planner and just see where your responsibilities are, and then ask yourself, where is some of this being wasted? Or they call them time robbers and time management. 3 hours binge watching, something like that. I don't know. I know we all spend a lot of time on social media. I'm not knocking social media, but it is a huge time robber. And the world's not going to come to an end if we don't answer a text within the first 2 seconds that we get the ping.
Well said. Looks like we have a few questions coming in now. The next question would be, how are you able to guide someone to manage one task at a time when they can't seem to calm down?
Yeah, good question. I just saw this one article posted about, I think it was, maybe I can send it to you, Dan. I forget who published it, but it was about how people who are on meds are trying to meditate and they go off their meds, and then we got all kinds of problems. So I know that anxiety is real big here. I'm real big with baby steps, just trying to do a minute of focused breathing. In terms of trying to assign importance to tasks, back to time management here, one thing they suggest is, make a list and then prioritize those things on the list. And then again, it's a skill. All these things are skills. The more you do, you better become at them. And it may be that, the best thing you can do in the course of a day is just make a list or make a partial list. That's progress. We see down here, we have celebrate your success, number 7. That is something to celebrate, because make a list of things that need to be done, not to feel guilty if you don't get them all done. We do not promote guilt at all in any of this. That's actually a form of anger and stress. So that's one reason why we don't. But I would say just increase awareness to say, hey, what are some things that you're on your list here? And then where can we fit in a minute, just a minute of unplugging and focus on your breathing? I don't claim to have all the answers for everyone's scenarios here, but I would say that might be a good starter point there. And it may sound like you think, oh God, I can't do that. Try it yourself first.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that's a good lead into the next question. You mentioned guilt there, and there's 2 questions here actually that could probably be rolled into one. So this person is wondering, where is the line between self-care and procrastination? And how can you recommend something, or what can you recommend for the guilt of not working? So it sounds like they're struggling with the idea of taking time to practice self-care because they feel guilty about not working. So how do you balance self-care and procrastination and that feeling of guilt?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I can tell you right now, I have never heard those 2 in the same sentence, self-care and procrastination. So I'm learning something from the group here. Thanks, Dan. I will tell you that there are people who definitely feel as if taking time for themselves isn't appropriate. And we can get into the whole I should stay clear of this topic, but for comic relief, Catholic guilt scenario. As somebody who was raised Catholic, I'm putting my tongue in my cheek as I say this. Yeah, there's definitely a sense of not being worthy. I don't think I'm worthy enough to take time for myself before I go do all these things here. And that, as I mentioned before, self-care is not a adoration of a conceit here. It is essential that you got to take care of yourself. Okay, let me give you a metaphor here. I taught some classes in water safety instruction back in college. That's how I made some money as a lifeguard. And the Red Cross teaches you this. They say, before you go in and save anybody in the water, make sure you can come back alive. In other words, one of the things you do in lifeguard training is you build up your endurance. And the reason is that if you go out and save someone in the water, which by the way is the last thing you do, is go in the water. But you want to make sure that we don't have 2 people drowned versus 1 person drowning. Now, the codependent person says, "Oh my God, I have to save that person," and you think like, "Oh my God, we have to have an attempt at here." No. Same thing with the airlines. Put your mask on first before you put the O2 mask on your kids. Otherwise, no one's going to have any O2, and we're all going to have casualties. So we need to actually acknowledge the fact that self-care is not. There's no guilt involved with self-care. Basically, it's like drinking water. Why would you deny yourself that? And so yeah, guilt. I think so. I got to do an interview this morning. They said, how does stress in America differ from other countries? I feel like saying we have so much more guilt over here. I got friends in Europe and Australia and Africa, and they're like, you Americans are crazy. So, that was a joke, although maybe true, I don't know. But anyway, the point being is that we do not want to feel guilty guilty about taking time to recharge our personal energy. We need to get over that one real quick. This bit about I'm not worthy is nonsense. And so, but I think it's very real. And I think our culture supports that. So back to be a culture of one, change your culture, even if it's only for a minute a day. And we all have a minute a day. How'd I do on that one, Dan? Dan?
Great, excellent. Sorry about that. Had just switched away to a different window as you were saying that. Excellent. So the follow-up question from them, from the person asking that last question is, how do you work through that guilt? So makes sense that you wouldn't necessarily need the guilt, but if the guilt is there, how do you sort of process that so you can actually spend the time on self-care?
Yeah. Okay. So the first question is ask yourself, okay, why do I feel guilty? Is it a question of self-worth? Is it a question of priorities that if I do this for myself, I'm not going to have time for my spouse or my kids or my clients? You can find a million reasons why you don't do self-care. Okay, this is a classic textbook example of that. So for first question is to ask yourself, okay, why do I feel guilty? And by and large, a lot of it comes down to the idea that um, uh, we're just not worthy of it, and we need to actually do a close examination and say, yes, you are. It's like denying yourself water. We all need water to drink. Um, now, if after having done that, we're still feeling guilty about it, I would say think to yourself of self-care is not like a vacation. It's not a reward. And that's part of the whole mythology of self-care that it's the bubble baths and the massages. It's a reward for all your hard work. This is like putting gas in the car to drive to work. Again, I'm using a metaphor here, but you don't feel guilty putting gas in the car. You don't feel guilty drinking water. And so that's about the best I can do off the top of my head right now. I hope that gives you some insight. And this is a skill, trying to cope with guilt. And by the way, there's a whole idea that guilt is a form of anger. So we can kind of go back a step there and ask us, why do we feel frustrated about this? And a lot of times it's because we feel like we're not getting the time for ourselves that we really need. I'll stop there.
Excellent. Thank you. Makes sense. That's all the questions we have for right now, but if any more come in, I will let you know.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dan. And we also put a link on this page here for the brochure for the workshop and coming up in the online workshop coming up in May. And for all people who are members of this this Facebook page and this organization, if you will, we're going to give $200 off. So if you decide you want to do that, then contact me. My email is on the brochure. You can also get that other ways too, I suppose, or contact me through Facebook. But we'll give $200 off the registration, early bird registration price for the workshop there, and you get a lot of great resources. I mean, the whole workshop is a toolbox of stuff. And I've had some people from this group who've actually taken the workshop last year, and they were just in complete adoration of how many things they walked away with, and talk about feeling empowered. That's so I want to make sure that people know that too. And any questions, feel free to email me. My email address is brianlukes@cs.com, BrianLukes@CS, C as in Charlie, S as in Sam.com.
Excellent. Thank you. Luke, before we go, could you give us some more information about the workshop? I know you dropped the link, but could you tell us a little bit more about what people will expect to learn, and what kind of resources they'll come away with?
Yeah, first of all, I love doing this workshop in person, and it broke my heart to have to put it online because I love the one-on-one contact with people, but I did. So what I did was I pre-recorded about 20 hours of presentations of what I'm going to call wisdom circles, where I share information with real nice slides. If you like what you've seen today, that's more of the same. And so I have about 20 hours of that. We have 3 1-hour Zoom classes on the first Monday of each week in the month of May. I think it's like the 7th, 10th, and 24th. And then I have one video call with each person for an hour. So we get a chance to do one-on-ones. You can ask me questions, we get to know each other, that kind of thing. The best part of any kind of event like this is networking with other people. And so to, get a sense of the fact that you're not alone. And again, loneliness is a huge problem these days. So in the workshop here, you have a workbook that actually has a lot of different worksheets that I give people to try and do some awareness exercises there. There's a textbook that is called Managing Stress, which I wrote, but it's the top selling textbook in the college market for stress management. It's a very holistic mind, body, spirit approach. In fact, I have a lot of students who tell me that they don't sell it. They like it so much they keep it. And it has a couple of audio tracks there too. We do music therapy. We do healthy boundaries. We do talk on digital toxicity and how to have healthy boundaries with that. Good night's sleep, nutrition, which is all part of the microbiome. And so you may be working with someone's mind in terms of this, but if they're not eating good, then you're not getting your best session with these people. But really what I do is I teach people how to teach this stuff or coach this stuff or do this in sessions one-on-one. It's my background as a college professor is where I kind of hone this in, but I've had numerous people, therapists, counselors. I know coaching is a dirty word in the therapy circles here, but a lot of coaches come in and then they use this as material to work with their clients. And so, so I put all this stuff on a flash drive. I'm gonna hold the flash drive right now. Because when I pass out this workbook, people said, this is great, but it'd be nice if we could actually have back in the day, we did a CD-ROM. So now we have a flash drive, but you can put so much more in a flash drive than just a PDF document. So there's all kinds of goodies here. There's slideshows, there's music, there's or MP3 files, all kinds of stuff. I have articles I've written, which you can pass out. I'm a real big fan of trying to empower people with more information. They can have articles. So lots of tools and things you can use for personal growth or professional development.